we are back. Welcome to my preview and predictions for Matchday 4 of the Champions League. Yes, another European week is upon us, and you know what that means. Daily videos once again on the channel. You are watching my Champions League previews and predictions for tomorrow and Wednesday's matches. Tomorrow morning will be my preview and predictions for the Europa League, and then Wednesday morning will be my previews and predictions for the Conference League. And the good news is for you guys that are watching this video today, you have the opportunity to still have your say on those Conference League and those Europa League matches over on the community page. As always, link will be available in the description and in the pinned comment of this video, so there is still plenty of time for you to have your say on all the matches taking place in Europe this week. But before we get into this one, as always, if you haven't done so already, please do consider dropping a like on this video if you enjoy all of my previews and predictions. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here with notifications turned on so you don't miss out on all those videos we've got coming up for you later in the week, including, of course, La Liga and Premier League at the end of the week as well. And if you want to gain access to even more previews and predictions from myself, you can do so by clicking the join button at the bottom of your screen right now to become a member of the channel. Right! Here we go then, once again, as always. You know the format by now. We've got 9 games on Tuesday. We're going to cover all of those first, and then 9 games on Wednesday, and we're going to cover all of them as well. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. 2 early kickoffs on Tuesday night, as always, and our journey begins this week in Europe, in Prague, where we see Slavia taking on Arsenal. So far, it's been 2 draws and a defeat for Slavia, although they can take confidence from their Matchday 3 result, which was a 0-0 draw away to Atalanta. For Arsenal, it's 3 wins out of 3 and no goals conceded in any of their 3 Champions League matches so far. Their most recent game in this competition, that dominant 4-0 win at the Emirates over Atletico Madrid. And since then, their incredible run has continued. They have now not conceded a single goal in any of their last 7 matches in all competitions, and they have won all 7 of those games as well. Although, interestingly, coming into this one, to their credit, Slavia are also 5 games without conceding a single goal as well. However, 2 of those games have been 0-0 draws. So, we'll see. I think it's a very, very tough ask for Slavia to keep Arsenal out. Then when we talk about the team news, they're still missing the likes of Holesh, Shrans and Sevic coming into this one. So they are struggling for key first team players. For Arsenal, Zubamendi is suspended for this match because incredibly he got booked in all 3 match days so far. So he is going to be out. And there are some question marks over Viktor Gyökeres, who Arteta said in his post-match interview felt a slight twinge in one of his muscles in the end of their game at the weekend. So he could be a potential doubt coming into this one. These 2 sides last met 4 years ago, and on that occasion, Arsenal won here 4-0. I don't think it's going to be as severe a victory for Arsenal, but I do think it's very capable that Arsenal could do that. I do think they're going to win. I do think it's going to be another clean sheet for the Gunners. But I'm going to go for a 3-0 victory for them. I think it's a very, very tough ask for Slavia to get anything from this match. Our other early kickoff, I mean, shall I just put 5-1 on the screen right now and move on? For those of you who don't know, Frankfurt have so far played 3 games in the Champions League and have had 1 5-1 victory and 2 5-1 defeats. The reason why I'm not instantly giving it to Napoli this time around is because let's not forget Napoli also lost quite severely on Matchday 3 because they lost 6-2 to PSV Eindhoven. So both sides come into this after a bit of a hammering on Matchday 3. Since then, though, both sides have been unbeaten. Napoli with 2 wins and a 0-0 draw against Como this weekend. For Frankfurt, 1 win and then back-to-back 1-1 draws. So they seem to have sorted out their defensive issues, but it kind of has been at the expense of scoring goals at the other end. So it makes this one a little bit more interesting going into it. In terms of the team news, Luca is going to be suspended for Napoli after he got himself sent off on Matchday 3. And Kevin De Bruyne has picked up yet another injury, sadly for him. Just can't keep him fit for more than 6 months at any point in his career, it seems. For Frankfurt, the real sad news is for Oscar Højlund, who will not be fit enough to face his brother, who obviously now plays at Napoli. Obviously being Rasmus Højlund, the former Manchester United player. They will not be playing against each other in this game as Oscar is injured. These 2 sides last met actually just a couple of years ago in 2023, with Napoli winning both home and away without conceding a single goal in either leg. To be honest, I don't think that's going to be true this time around, i.e. I think Frankfurt are going to score in this game, but I still think the result is going to be the same. And I'm going to go for a 3-1 victory to Napoli. If it ends up being 5-1 Napoli, then my word, what a run of results that is for Frankfurt. But I don't think it's going to be as crazy this time around. On to our later kickoffs on Tuesday then, and the first one sees Atletico Madrid taking on Union Saint-Gilloise. Both of these sides lost 4-0 on match day 3. We've already spoken about Atletico losing 4-0 at Arsenal, but for USG it was a 4-0 defeat at home to Inter Milan, meaning they've actually lost back-to-back games at home 4-0 on match day 2 and 3, because they also lost to Newcastle 4-0 at home on match day 2. Since then, though, both sides have been 100% domestically. Atletico Madrid have had wins over Real Betis and Sevilla, both of those results without conceding. For Union, it has been 3 back-to-back victories for them in Belgium, only conceding 1 goal in their 3 matches. In terms of the team news, there's actually barely any absentees for either side. There's actually no fresh concerns out of the weekend fixtures, respectively. The only player I can sort of see as a major doubt for either side is Barros for Atletico Madrid, or Barrios, should I say, for Atletico Madrid. Other than that, both sides are pretty much full strength coming into this, and with no previous head-to-head record to speak of between these two sides either, we've basically just got to eyeball it and say who do we think is the stronger side coming into this one. And on paper, in my opinion, that is the home side, which is, of course, Atletico Madrid, the side from Spain. I don't think, again, it's going to be as crazy as the scorelines that Union have had in recent games. And also, I should point out that in La Liga so far this season, Atletico have been very sloppy against so-called weaker sides. And I think they may see Union as one of them, so it may end up backfiring for them. But I'm going to go for a 2-0 victory to the Spanish side. We shall see what happens there, though. Now to two sides who have actually failed to get a single win in the Champions League so far this season. That is Bodo Glimt and Monaco. Both sides have 2 draws and 1 defeat. Bodo are only 1 goal ahead of Monaco so far in terms of goal difference. Last time out, for them, it was a 3-1 defeat for Galatasaray. For Monaco, it was a 0-0 draw at home to Spurs, something that Bodo can also boast as they drew 2-2 at home to Spurs on match day 2. So early indications do suggest that this one is going to be close. In terms of the team news, I think there is certainly an advantage in Bodo's favour. They've had basically their only real concern is their backup striker being Brynhildsen, whereas for Monaco, they're still without Hradetsky, Vanderson, Dyer, Zakaria, and there's been still no appearances for Paul Pogba yet as well. They also lost at home this weekend to Paris FC. That's not PSG, that's the other side from Paris. They lost 1-0 at home to Paris FC this weekend. To be fair, Bodo also lost this weekend 3-1 away to Vålerenga. But their home form has always been a massive positive for them, especially in European competitions. In my opinion, if there was going to be a winner of this match, I would actually go for Bodo, given the fact that they do have that very good record at home in Europe. But in my opinion, no outright favourite. These sides love a draw in this competition so far this season. So I'm going for a 1-1 draw for Bodo and Monaco. Now to Juventus, who are just 1 goal further ahead of Bodo. On top of that, you actually look there, Monaco 27th, Bodo 26th, Juventus 25th. And like I just said, that is because they are just 1 further goal above Bodo in terms of goal difference, because they also have 2 draws and a defeat so far this season. That most recent one being a defeat to Real Madrid on match day 3. For Sporting, it's been 2 wins and a defeat for them so far, and their most recent result in this competition was a victory over Marseille with a nice late comeback in that one. And since then, they've been on a fantastic run because they've actually won their last 5 matches in all competitions. That being said, since Tudor was sacked from Juventus, Juve have also won all of their games under Spalletti so far. 2 wins out of 2, and they're looking much better with him in charge. So for me, that does give me the slight advantage to Juventus, especially with them being the home side coming into this one as well. That being said, when you look at the team news, there could be a major absentee for Juventus because their young superstar Ildis missed their game at the weekend and is still a doubt coming into this one. And Lloyd Kelly is also out. For Sporting, Fresneda went off after just 10 minutes in their game at the weekend, and with Debast also out injured, they could be struggling in that area of the pitch coming into this one. These two sides last met in 2023, should I say, just 2 years ago, and back then it was a 1-1 draw in Portugal, and it was a 1-0 victory here in Turin. Personally, I think this one is going to be similarly close between these two, but I've said throughout, I think Juve are slight favourites, so I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory to the Italian Giants. Now to the first of our two mega fixtures taking place on Tuesday night. It is Liverpool taking on Real Madrid. Despite their poor run of form at the moment, Liverpool do have 2 wins in their first 3 games in the Champions League, which does of course include a 5-1 victory over Eintracht Frankfurt last time out. And to their credit, they played much, much better this weekend against Aston Villa in the Premier League, getting a 2-0 victory at Anfield. For Real Madrid, no real surprises. 3 wins out of 3 for them in the Champions League so far, including a 1-0 victory over Juventus last time out. And as we've mentioned multiple times on this series and in the Champions League and in the La Liga series, Real Madrid have won every single game so far this season, apart from the Madrid derby. That run continued since Matchday 3, beating Barcelona in the Clásico and then comfortably beating Valencia 4-0 this weekend as well. In terms of the team news, I think crucially for Liverpool, no fresh concerns coming out of that Aston Villa game. However, there is still very unlikely we'll see Alisson or Alexander Isak or Jeremy Frimpong in this match. For Real Madrid, it's all about one man, Trent Alexander-Arnold, returning to Anfield. He's not played a game since September, but he has been on the bench for their last 2 matches, and it is expected he'll play at least some part in this fixture. They are still without Dani Carvajal and Antonio Rudiger. To be honest, it is a tough one to call now, purely because of that Aston Villa game. But if you look at the form overall, you would have to favour Real Madrid in this fixture. I think Liverpool just haven't quite been at it so far this year. Furthermore, these two sides last met again just a couple of years ago, 2023. Back then, Liverpool went 2-0 up in this fixture before Real Madrid romped back to win the game 5-2 and the end of it. And that was at Anfield. So I'm going to go for Real Madrid, but just watch this space. I think Liverpool do have a slight chance in this one. I say certainly more than a slight chance, but I'm still going to go for a Real Madrid victory. I'm going for 3-1 to Madrid. Next up, it is Olympiacos taking on PSV Eindhoven. 2 sides who just cannot help but be in high-scoring fixtures at the moment, it seems. For Olympiacos, it was a 6-1 defeat to Barcelona on Matchday 3. For PSV, it was a 6-2 victory against Napoli. And since then, Olympiacos have played 3, won 3, scored 9 and conceded 1. PSV have played 2, won 2, scored 7 and conceded 4. So, like I've just said, expect there to be plenty of goals in this one. I think this could be a proper fun one here. To be honest, not really much to report in terms of team news coming into this. Both sides came through their weekend fixtures unscathed. And if you actually look at their squad, they've basically got full complements each. So my team news is both sides have a full first team to pick from. So could make things even more interesting there. The last time these two met was in 2021. Back then, it was a 4-2 victory to Olympiacos. So, again, expect goals here, people. But to be honest with you, again, looking at the form of these two sides so far, especially in this competition, I'm going to have the Dutch side as the favourites for this fixture. And I'm actually going to go for the reverse of the scoreline that we saw here in Greece 4 years ago. And I'm going to go for a 4-2 victory to PSV Eindhoven. From PSV, we now move to PSG. And they will be hosting Bayern Munich in what I actually think is the biggest fixture of the night. I know the highest profile in terms of Champions League wins and whatnot is Liverpool-Real Madrid. I actually think this is the biggest game of tomorrow night. Furthermore, it is first against second in the Champions League so far this season. It's the team that won the Champions League last season against the team that I have tipped to win the Champions League this season. So, massive, massive, massive game this in the context of the, well, certainly the league phase, probably not the actual competition as a whole. Coming into this, both of these sides are fully deserving of their top 2 spots. They've played 3, won 3. They both have a plus 11 goal difference. PSG just ahead on goals scored, but that also means they've conceded more. So, does make it a little bit of an interesting dynamic coming into this one. The big thing coming into this is that Bayern Munich have still won every single game so far this season. Played 15, won 15 in all competitions. However, PSG have still been dropping points in League One. They've even dropped points since match day 3, but they did manage to pick up a 1-0 victory this weekend. But that was even due to a 94th minute winner from Gonzalo Ramos, whereas for Bayern Munich, it was a comfortable 3-0 victory over Bayer Leverkusen. And what makes that result even more scary is that they rested Kane, Diaz and Elise. They literally rested their front three against one of the best sides in Germany and still beat them very comfortably. To be fair, PSG did rest Ousmane Dembele and Fabian Ruiz, as well as a couple of others, in their victory this weekend. So both sides are going to be coming into this with their first team players fit and ready for this match. One thing I would say, though, is that for PSG, Zabrani is going to be suspended after his red card against Bayer Leverkusen. However, Marquinhos could return. It should also be noted, we've just spoke about Bayern beating Leverkusen 3-0. In match day 3, PSG beat Leverkusen 7-2 away from home. So maybe that does tilt the balance in PSG's favour just a little bit, but we shall see. The final thing to note is that the last time these two sides met was in the Club World Cup this summer, and PSG knocked Bayern out of the tournament by winning that game 2-0. That game was the last game that Bayern Munich didn't win. I said they've played 15, won 15. If you want to include pre-season friendlies, it's actually played 18, won 18. The last game Bayern Munich didn't win was when they lost to PSG in the Club World Cup. So even more emphasis on this game being so important. To be honest, I do think PSG should be considered the favourites for it, being defending champions, being the last side to beat Bayern, and still technically being top of the table so far. However, I have not backed Bayern Munich to win this competition if I didn't think they could beat PSG. So I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to back the team that I think is going to win the competition, and I'm going to go for 2-1 to Bayern. But again, I'll warn you here, PSG should be considered favourites for this match. And then finally for Tuesday, we have Spurs taking on Copenhagen. Spurs currently unbeaten in the Champions League with a win and 2 draws. Copenhagen currently winless with a draw and 2 defeats. So definitely Spurs should be considered 100% favourites for this match. However, their recent form, particularly at home, has been absolutely woeful, putting in an absolute stinker of a performance this weekend at home to Chelsea, losing 1-0. Realistically, could have been 3 or 4-0. They only had 0.05 XG at home in the Premier League, which is an absolute shocking statistic. For Copenhagen, they lost to Dortmund last time out, but have had back-to-back wins back in Denmark over the last couple of weeks, winning 3-2 this weekend. In terms of the team news, there's actually no sort of major fresh concerns for either side, although Spurs could be without Bergvall after he went off with a concussion, so you'd have to assume he's going to be out due to concussion protocol. However, Sergio Romero is going to be back for them. It's just both sides have a lot of long-term injuries. We've spoken to death about the likes of Madison and Kulusevski. For Copenhagen, you've got the likes of Mailing and Delaney, as well as a couple of others as well. So neither side is at full strength. Neither side is particularly playing well in Europe so far this season, especially Spurs not playing well at home. However, if they don't win this game, I do think it would be a major upset. So I'm going to go for a Spurs victory purely because I think they should win. I'm going for a 2-0 victory to Tottenham. Before we move on to Wednesday, just one quick bit of admin to do, which is to, of course, tell you what you guys have been saying over on the community page for these 9 fixtures. And you have gone for the following. Majority think Arsenal are going to beat Slavia. Majority think Napoli are going to beat Frankfurt. Basically, everyone thinks Atletico are going to beat USG. More of you have gone for Monaco over Bodo. However, it is pretty close with all 3 results. Majority of you think Juventus are going to beat Sporting. Majority of you think Real Madrid are going to beat Liverpool. Majority of you think PSV are going to beat Olympiacos. The majority of you have agreed with me that Bayern Munich are going to go to PSG and get the win. But again, we shall see. And our most dominant prediction of Tuesday night is that basically everyone thinks Spurs are going to beat Copenhagen. Again, I remind you at this point to head over to the community page to have your say on the Europa League and the Europa Conference League. But let's now move on to Wednesday's fixtures, where we start off once again with the early games. And the first of those sees Pafos taking on Villarreal. Now, for Pafos, it has actually been 2 0-0 draws away from home, weirdly having someone sent off in both of those fixtures so far, and then a 5-1 defeat at home to Bayern Munich. For Villarreal, it's been even worse for them because they drew to Juventus and have then had defeats to Spurs and Manchester City. However, on paper, Those are three very tough sides, and Pafos should be a game that they should find far easier. Since match day 3, the form has heavily been in favour of the Spanish side as well, as they have picked up victories over Valencia and Rayo Vallecano without conceding a single goal, whereas Pafos have really been struggling. They lost to Ammonia Nicosia, then drew with AEK Larnaca, both sides currently in the Europa Conference League. However, they did pick up a 1-0 victory yesterday. I just don't think they're going to have what it takes to keep Villarreal out in this game, though. In terms of the team news, actually no fresh concerns for either side out of their respective matches this weekend. Realistically, this should be considered a strong Villarreal victory. We know that Pafos can defend, so I don't think it's going to be particularly high scoring. I don't think Villarreal are of the calibre of Bayern Munich to go there and score 5, but it would be a shock to see Villarreal not come away with the victory here. I'm starting Wednesday's predictions with a 2-0 victory to the Spanish side. The other early game sees Qarabag hosting Chelsea. Qarabag's Champions League bubble did appear to burst in match day 3 when they lost 3-1 away to Athletic Club Bilbao. However, 6 points from their opening 3 matches is still a fantastic start for them. For Chelsea, it's actually the same number of points. They're only ahead of Qarabag because they put 5 past Ajax on match day 3. But since then, there's been a little bit of mixed form from the English side, losing at home to Sunderland, but then putting on a really good performance this weekend in that victory over Spurs that we just spoke about, albeit Spurs were absolutely tragic in that game. But ultimately, it would be the English side that you have to consider as the overwhelming favourites for this match. To be fair to the side from Azerbaijan, though, they actually haven't conceded a single goal in any of their domestic matches since match day 3. However, as always, I don't think you can stack up other teams in Azerbaijan compared to a side of the stature of Chelsea, who are, of course, the current world champions. In terms of the team news, Camilo Duran hasn't featured for Qarabag since match day 3 and remains a doubt for this one. And for Chelsea, you would expect some rotation from Maresca. He always changes his team from weekend to midweek. No fresh injury concerns for Chelsea, however, the likes of Palmer and Levi Cole will remain out for them. To be honest with you, I don't really think I need to say too much more in this one. There is actually a head-to-head record between these two sides, but it dates back to 2017. Back then, Chelsea won by an aggregate scoreline of 10-0, with it being a 4-0 victory for the Blues on this ground. I could see that very easily being the case again. However, when Jorgensen plays in goal, they do seem to be a little bit more ropey at the back. So I'm going to give Qarabag a goal, but I'm going to keep Chelsea with their 4, and I'm going to go for a 4-1 victory to Chelsea. On to the later kickoffs then, and we have Ajax taking on Galatasaray, as I've just mentioned. Ajax losing 5-1 to Chelsea on match day 3, and that result sees them bottom of the Champions League table, and they're now facing a Galatasaray side who are unbeaten in their last 11 matches, which includes victories over Liverpool and Bodo Glimt on match day 2 and 3 respectively. Despite winning over FC Twente after match day 3, they drew at home this time to Heerenveen, which has continued to pile pressure on Johnny Heitinga as the Ajax manager, with people saying that Ajax as a club has lost its identity with him in charge, with the amount of foreign signings that have been brought in, rather than promotion of youth players, which is what we know Ajax for doing. As for Galatasaray, as we mentioned, 11 games unbeaten. Their most recent result was a 0-0 draw at home to Trabzonspor this weekend. So neither side coming into this off of a victory, but you would still have the Turkish side as the one with the more momentum. The team news isn't great for Ajax coming into this one either. Taylor is suspended following his red card against Chelsea on match day 3, and all of Dolberg, Van den Boomen and Berghaus are injured for this one, whereas for Galatasaray, their only absentee is set to be İlkay Gündoğan. And when you consider the amount of attacking talent that Galatasaray have, you do think it's going to be a difficult one for Ajax to come out on top on. That being said, these two sides did actually meet in the Europa League last season, and back then Ajax took the 2-1 victory. However, what is so staggering about this new Ajax regime is that you're probably going to be looking at an entirely different starting 11 and management staff, with this game being just 10 months after that 2-1 victory over Galatasaray. Whereas for Galatasaray, there's only going to be like 1 or 2 changes likely from that side from 10 months ago. It's absolutely crazy what's been going on at Ajax over the past few months. And with that being said, I just have to go for a Galatasaray win here. I still think it's going to be very close, but I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to Galatasaray. Now to two sides that realistically must win this fixture. You've got Benfica in 35th, and Bayer Leverkusen in 30th. Two sides who, if we're being honest, should really be higher up the table than they actually are. But for Benfica, it's 0 points from their first 3 matches, their most recent game being a 3-0 defeat to Newcastle. For Leverkusen, it's been 2 draws, and then that absolute hammering 7-2 by PSG last time out. And as we've already mentioned in this video, they also lost 3-0 to Bayern Munich this weekend. However, a victory here could actually propel them into the top half. Since matchday 3, it's been 3 games, 3 wins, 11 goals and 0 conceded for Jose Mourinho's Benfica. For Leverkusen, they had actually won back-to-back games in the Bundesliga before their defeat to Bayern. So maybe there is still some momentum behind them, but certainly the overall momentum is with Benfica coming into this game. In terms of the team news, there's been no sign of Dedic for Benfica since the defeat to Newcastle, so he remains a doubt. And for Bayer Leverkusen, Andrich is suspended following his red card against PSG, and all of Tillman, Palacios, Teller and Lucas Vazquez are out injured for this match. Been over 10 years since these two sides met in competitive competition, so can't read anything into that head-to-head record either. If I had to pick a favourite, I think right now I'd probably go in favour of Benfica, but I just don't think they've done enough so far, certainly not in this competition, to convince me they're going to beat Bayer Leverkusen here. For me, all 3 results are possible, and whenever that is the case, I always go for a draw. So I'm going for 1-1. For Benfica and Bayer Leverkusen. Next up, we're heading off to Belgium for Club Brugge taking on Barcelona. And for Brugge, unfortunately for them, it's out of the frying pan and into the fire, because their reward for losing 4-0 to Bayern Munich is to face another multiple Champions League winner in Barcelona on matchday 4. Now, to their credit, they have done very well since matchday 3, playing 3 and winning 3 in Belgium. And let's also not forget that Barcelona did lose the Clasico last week, but did beat Elche 3-1 this weekend. And it should also be massively noted that when Barcelona beat Olympiacos 6-1 in matchday 3, they basically played as many teenagers in that match as they did senior players. So Barcelona are still playing some very, very good stuff at the moment and will obviously come into this game as favourites. In terms of the team news, no fresh concerns for Brugge. Some good news for Barcelona, some much needed good news for them, as both Lewandowski and Dani Olmo were able to come on as substitutes against Elche and could be potentially available to start this game for Barca coming into this one. However, all of Pedri, Gavi and Rafinha still remain out. There's no recent head-to-head record between these two sides, and quite frankly, given Barcelona's growing injury crisis, even though a few players are coming back, they're probably not going to get a better chance to get a result against Barcelona than they are in this game. However, I'm still very, very confident that Barcelona are going to be the side that comes out on top here. In my opinion, they have still got too much talent for Brugge to cause them any significant issues. I'm going for a 3-1 win to Barca. Now to what on paper really should be the easiest prediction of the entire week. We have Inter Milan taking on Kairat. And for Inter, it's 3 games, 3 wins, no goals conceded and a 4-0 victory over USG on matchday 3. For Kairat, to their credit, they did get their first ever Champions League point on matchday 3 when they drew 0-0 at home to Pafos. However, it should be noted that it was Pafos, who aren't the greatest side in this competition, let's be honest, and Pafos had a player sent off after just 2 minutes in that match. So, you know, still drawing 0-0 against a 10-man side for an entire 90 minutes. It's not a good look for them coming into this. And look, we all know how good Inter Milan are coming into this. In terms of the team news for Inter, their only real concern is Mkhitaryan, who hasn't played since their defeat to Napoli. They did beat Hellas Verona this weekend 2-1. No fresh concerns for Kairat, who themselves drew this weekend 1-1 against Astana. Obviously, there's no head-to-head record between these two sides, and obviously Inter Milan are going to be considered the heavy favourites for this fixture. Anything other than a comfortable win for Inter Milan would be a major, major shock. I'm going for a 5-0 victory to the Italian side. On to what is probably the biggest game on Wednesday night, certainly in terms of league position, as we have Manchester City taking on Borussia Dortmund, 7th taking on 6th. Dortmund ahead of Manchester City by 1 goal in terms of goal difference. However, that has come about by Borussia Dortmund scoring 6 more than Manchester City, but conceding 5 more. So, again, could be a very, very open game, this one, especially when you consider how well both of these sides have been playing recently. In terms of what has been going on, Manchester City won on match day 3, beating Villarreal 2-0. And for Borussia Dortmund, it was a 4-2 victory away in Copenhagen. This weekend, it was an impressive 3-1 victory for Manchester City over Bournemouth, who were second in the Premier League going into that game, with their main man Erling Haaland scoring twice yet again. For Borussia Dortmund, it was another victory for them in the Bundesliga, with their main man Seydou Guirassy scoring yet again in a 1-0 win against Augsburg. In terms of the team news for Manchester City, Rodri was able to make his return, but I don't think he's going to be fit enough to start this game against Borussia Dortmund. But other than that, no major concerns for Manchester City at all. For Borussia Dortmund, there are doubts over Schlotterbeck, who missed the game this weekend with an illness, and Niklas Süle is definitely going to be out of this one. For some reason, I thought it'd been more recent that these two have played each other, but it's actually been nearly 4 years since these two sides last played a competitive match. Back then, it was Manchester City who edged out Borussia Dortmund 2-1 at the Etihad. To be honest, I don't see this one going much different. I could see there being potentially a few more goals, but I think City are going to be the overwhelming favourites. Obviously, Haaland against his former club as well. It's going to be a battle of the goal scorers, and I think Erling is going to be the one who comes out on top in the end. I'm going for a 2-1 victory to Manchester City, the same scoreline as it was 4 seasons ago. Penultimate game then sees Marseille taking on Atalanta, and well, for Marseille, what a difference one moment can make in the terms of the momentum of a team throughout an entire season. They were winning against Sporting Lisbon until Emerson Royal took a dive in the penalty area, got himself a second yellow for diving, which resulted in him getting sent off. From there, Marseille lost the game 2-1, then have gone on a terrible run in Ligue 1, losing and then drawing at home to Angers. However, they did manage to get a victory this weekend against Auxerre, but genuinely, just off the back of 1 red card, Marseille's incredible start to the season basically fell off a cliff over the course of the last few weeks. For Atalanta, though, it's not going much better for them. They drew 0-0 at home to Slavia Prague on match day 3. That was their 3rd of 6 consecutive draws. That run ended this weekend when they lost 1-0 away to Udinese. So, to be honest, neither side have great momentum coming into this. However, off the back of their win this weekend, you would still have Marseille as the favourites coming into this one. In terms of the team news, Marseille did actually rest the likes of Mason Greenwood and Igor Paixão coming into this game. And there's a good reason for that, because all of Traore, Guri, Weah, Medina and Kondogbia are out injured. And of course, Emerson will be suspended for this game following his red card. For Atalanta, their only real concern is for Martin Darun. He is going to be missing for them through injury. These two actually played in the semi-final of the Europa League 2 seasons ago. It was a 1-1 draw on this ground before Atalanta then got the 3-0 victory back in Italy, which then saw them go on to the final, which they, of course, won over Bayer Leverkusen. However, in the last 18 months, I think it's quite clear that Marseille have got significantly better, and in my opinion, Atalanta have got significantly worse. For me, I think anything but a Marseille victory would be a shock. Maybe Atalanta could squeeze another draw. They do seem to be draw specialists at the moment, but I'm going for a 2-0 victory to Marseille. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Newcastle taking on Athletic Club Bilbao. It was a great win for Newcastle on match day 3, winning 3-0 over Benfica, meaning it's 6 points from their opening 3 games. For Bilbao, they finally got their first win of the Champions League campaign, beating Qarabag on match day 3. However, it has not helped their form so far this season, because since then it's been another run of shocking results in La Liga, losing both matches since match day 3, losing at home to Getafe, then losing 3-2 away to Real Sociedad this weekend. For Newcastle, they had an incredible run of form at home. However, they did lose this weekend in what was a very poor performance yesterday against West Ham, ultimately ending up losing 3-1. In terms of the team news coming into this one, Newcastle are without both of their first choice right backs, with both Kieran Trippier and Livramento out. So either Emil Kraft will continue at right back, or they're going to put Chow to right back like they did in the second half and change their back line to sort of fit all of that in. For Athletic Club Bilbao, Nico Williams is still a slight doubt. He's not been able to play 90 minutes yet since coming back. His brother Inaki is still definitely out, as well as Lekue. It could be an interesting one. There's no competitive head-to-head record between these two sides, although for those of you who care, they did play a friendly in 2022 with Newcastle winning 2-1, but you can't really look at friendlies. Certainly one's played that long ago. Honestly, I do think Newcastle should be considered the strong favourites for this one. I am going to give Bilbao a goal, though, considering Newcastle's vulnerabilities in that right-back area. And, of course, Nico Williams playing on that left-hand side is Bilbao's strongest player. I'm still going to go for that Newcastle win, though. And I'm going to go for 3-1 to the Toon. That is going to be it in terms of my previews and predictions for the Champions League this week. Before I leave you, once again, let's have a look at what you guys have been saying on the community page for these 9 fixtures on Wednesday. And you have gone for the following. Majority think Villarreal beat Pafos. Majority think Chelsea beat Qarabag. Majority think Galatasaray beat Ajax. Very, very, very close between Benfica and Leverkusen. 33% Benfica, 31% draw, 36% Bayer Leverkusen. Majority think Barcelona are going to beat Brugge. 94% have gone for Inter to beat Kairat, with 6% going for the draw. That is brave if you think it's going to be anything other than Inter win. Majority think Man City are going to beat Dortmund. Majority think Marseille are going to beat Atalanta. And basically everyone thinks Newcastle will beat Athletic Club Bilbao. Let's pop my predictions back on the screen for you before I leave you. And once again, I would just say a massive thank you very much for everyone that has got involved in this video. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Another reminder that you've still got plenty of time to have your say on the Europa League and the Europa Conference League. Every single one of those fixtures available for you on the community page right now, so you can have your say on all of those matches. And of course, let me know down in the comment section of this video everything you think is going to happen across these next couple of nights in the Champions League. A final thank you very much for watching once again. I'll see you again same time tomorrow for the Europa League previews and predictions.